Well, hello, and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and ITY TV video interview. I'm joined today by Nicci Rossouw. She's the outgoing CEO of Robotics Australia Group, on the topic of her excellent tenure and her upcoming triumphs, the Australian Robotics Expo 2026, happening this Thursday, the 16th of April at the Canberra Institute of Technology. I'll be attending, and the second Excellence in Robotics Awards night that same evening. Nicci, welcome to the show.
Alex, thank you so much. Great to be here.
Thank you for taking the time. Now, Nicci, before we go any further, could you please briefly tell us about the mission of Robotics Australia Group and the value you bring to the Australian robotics industry in 2026?
Thank you for the opportunity. So Robotics Australia Group is the peak body for robotics in Australia. We represent from industrial robots to field robots and anything in between. And our mission is to advocate for our network members, make connections, inform and promote on behalf of our network members and the broader robotics community in Australia.
Now, I don't know if you've been a fan of Isaac Asimov, but I've read all of his robot novels and I love it. Now, the second best thing is that to being a robot or having a robot is to be the CEO of the Robotics Australia Group. And you've been that for 3 years now. And you've recently announced you're handing the reins to incoming CEO Paul Mason. He's the co-host of the Manufacturing Tech Australia podcast and former Association for Manufacturing Excellence member. And that's starting in the first week of May. So what's the single biggest change you've seen in the Australian robotics ecosystem during your tenure, and what do you think Paul will need to tackle first?
I think the single biggest thing I've seen is funding that's been allocated to robotic companies in Australia. That's been a huge achievement. I think partly because of the technology being quite stable. Typically investors would look at software stacks and things like that, but the hardware is becoming far more sophisticated today that if you look at a robot, and you and I were briefly chatting about this, if you're seeing a video of a robot doing something fantastic, the question is, does it do that when it lands in your office or your home? Is this what you've been sold? Is it true to form? So I think that's really something for the community to look forward to. And Paul, I hope he's just going to build on the basis that I've been able to do the last 3 years for the community. I think it's very important, the exposure for robotic companies. If you spoke to, just Mr. Smith on the road and you said, what do you know about robotics in Australia? What's the education around it? Are they frightened of it, or do they go, oh, they know about delivery robots, Roombas cleaning the house. They know about robots in restaurants dropping off food. And what's their attitude? Are they open to it, or do they see this as a threat? And I think that's a huge part of our work, is to educate the general public. I think we've done it really well on LinkedIn. We've got over 11,000 followers. I'm on our page now, and I think the last stat was something like 370,000 people have seen our LinkedIn page. You can always go in the background to see what stats there are. That's always hugely important to me. So yes, Paul is very, very excited about the role. Of course, he's got a deep manufacturing and robotics background, so I think he's just ideally suited for this role. And I look forward to seeing what he's going to do with the association.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't quite yet have, or at all yet have, the world of iRobot with robots running around everywhere and helping us with all sorts of things, although presumably that will be relatively commonplace by 2035, say. But, it's events like the Australian Robotics Expo, which is free to attend with tickets on Eventbrite, are a glimpse into that future. And it will run alongside the Canberra Institute of Technology's Digital Day, which combines over 15 companies from the Institute with your own exhibitor roster. So that's a deliberate pairing of industry and education. So how did the collaboration with CIT come together? And what does it signal about the role TAFEs and vocational training play in building Australia's robotics workforce?
Canberra Institute of Technology are network members of Robotics Australia Group, so it just became an obvious solution. When I mentioned to Monique Rutten, we were thinking of hosting the first Australian Robotics Expo. They've got a new campus in Bowden, and fantastic campus. And she said, look, they're doing this digital day. Would we like to collaborate? And I thought, fantastic. It's our first one that we're hosting this year. Paul and I have already chatted. I think Melbourne is the place for it next year. But I like giving smaller states the opportunity as well, because everything typically is done in Sydney or Melbourne, and then places like Adelaide and West Australia miss all these places miss out. So I just thought, well, it's fair to do it in Canberra this year, and I think it's been a fantastic collaboration. Monique and her team have been just absolutely marvelous in helping and facilitating all of this. It's very important for education institutions to be collaborating with us. Universities are producing the next generation of engineers coming out, the roboticists. So it just makes complete sense to me that they should be collaborating with Robotics Australia Group. And we've got 10 universities as network members of ours. And we help them. They're always sending us emails to say, look, we're needing partners in some project we're doing. And I hit the emails and I send it out to our network members and I say, here's an opportunity to collaborate. We're really good at making introductions. I think last year alone, I probably did 300 introductions just off the top of my head to people wanting to know stuff and who should they be speaking to. So that is a huge role of what we're doing in the industry.
Yeah, and lucky for me, I'm living in Canberra, so it's perfect. Perfect, but I mean, there's a lot of government organisations here, federal government, and all the rest. So it's a great place to do it, and of course, it'll be great in Melbourne next year as well. I look forward to that particular event too. But the exhibitor list spans everything from FBR, whose Hadrian X bricklaying robot can lay 360 blocks per hour and costs 7.8 million Australian dollars. You've also got Contactile, University of New South Wales spin out, giving robots a human sense of touch through tactile sensors, to Robotics automating welding, robot programming from CAD files out of Wollongong. So for ITY readers who want to understand the breadth of what's on show, how would you characterize the range of exhibitors this year? And are there any that you think will be genuinely surprising attendees?
We do have a range of exhibitors that as you've just mentioned, and they vary hugely. And I'd encourage your listeners to go to our website and have a look at our Robotics Australia roadmap. There are 18 categories, and we use those categories to guide our awards this year as well. So everyone could nominate for a particular category. And this is the tricky thing about robotics. When you talk about robotics, everyone's got a different picture in their mind. You could have Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back, and that's your vision of a robot. If you spoke to Dr. John Weil, who's on our board and a roboticist, he'd say, well, his washing machine is a robot. What is the definition of a robot? So Contactile, of course, is in field robotics. Robotics is software, and they've partnered up with Infinite Robotics, and they're doing welding solutions. So this is the thing, it varies greatly in terms of how do you define the robot and what category do you put it. But for us, the Robotics Roadmap of Australia 2025 edition is free to download. And as I said, we've got 18 chapters of where you'd find robotics being used in the ecosystem in Australia today. And I think your listeners may be pleasantly surprised of what's happening in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the word robot coming from the Polish or the Russian word robota, which means to work. Well, a robot is a worker, and it's something that humans have been dreaming about, these automatons, for, at least the last century, if not longer. So it's so exciting to finally see this coming true in a way that, even with the 1x.tech Neo robot that was launched last September, that can actually, be in your home right now. If you've got $20,000 you want to buy one, the home robot revolution is real. And I really look forward to being able to go down to, a Harvey Norman or a JB Hi-Fi or those sorts of stores within, hopefully, by 2030 and buy one. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Now, the Robotics Australia Group's 7-point action plan aims to establish Australia as a global leader in trustworthy robotics by 2030. We're now closer to that deadline than when the plan was written. So realistically, where does Australia sit on that trajectory right now? And which of those 7 points has seen the most traction?
Look, I think in terms of trustworthiness and our position in the ecosystem, the global ecosystem, Australians are well recognized as experts in what they do, especially in the space of field robotics. Our mining robotic solutions are world class, and we certainly lead the pack there. I speak to a lot of international companies, and I mention to them the work that our robotic companies doing and our roboticists, and all the feedback I've got is they thought of extremely highly. A lot of our robotic companies have had the honor of going overseas and working a little bit, and then of course coming back to Australia. So international experience is always good. It's always interesting to me that you need to go offshore to come back here to be an international success. And I go, actually, these people are very, very successful here. I think the challenge for Australian robotic companies is, we mentioned they're all engineers and they're all very quiet people. And it may be a different conversation that I'm thinking of now, but they're not really exceptionally good at tooting their own horns, and that is part of the work of Robotics Australia Group, is to get out there and really showcase what our community is doing. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, if you're not, you should do so. We do 2 posts a day to showcase the community and work that they're doing, and I think we can just be exceptionally proud of what's going on in the Australian ecosystem.
Yeah, well, I've interviewed Sue before, who's the chair of the Robotics Australia Group, but actually it wasn't until I saw the post about the upcoming expo this Thursday that I really got interested and contacted you. And now we're having this video interview, and I'll be there on the day, going to every stand. I want to do a little video interview with each of the attendees, the exhibitors rather, and seeing them showcase what they've got. And then, of course, the awards night. So great work on the LinkedIn activity. It certainly caught my attention, and I'm sure it'll be a packed event on Thursday.
Alex, thank you so much. And thank you for being our media partner in this event. I think it's going to be an absolutely fantastic evening. We've got over 100 attendees at the awards night. As you mentioned, it's the second awards night. The first awards night we had in Melbourne last year.
Yeah, well, I mean, this media partnership has been very hastily cobbled together, but I'm so pleased to be able to be doing that for and with you, because this will help get the message out, and Australians will be able to see exactly the sort of things that so many of these different companies are up to. And we have to get these things right before we start having the humanoid android robots in our homes. There's so much industrial work that's being done. I spoke to Legrand a couple of years ago. They're one of the sponsors of the block, and I mean, they've got a lot of robotics happening in their factory, and that had tens of thousands of views on LinkedIn because they were sponsoring the block, and obviously people know who they are. But that was, just a great sign that people are hungry for this. And of course, with the physical AI robot revolution taking place, I mean, I just was wondering, by 2050, once perhaps robots and AI is sentient, maybe we'll have a robot CEO of the robotics group.
I certainly hope not. As much as I love my little robot friends. Look, I always say to people, my philosophy around robotics is, what problem are you solving? Is it a dirty, dull, dangerous space that you need a robot to go in, that you don't really want a human being going in? I think we need our human touch. I think it's essential, and robots are there to augment our lives. They're there to help us. I don't think they're there to replace us. They work together.
Yeah, it's not about features, it's about outcomes. That's what people want these days from whatever it is that they're buying and using. Now, Australia's robotics market hit roughly $1.5 billion in 2024, and is projected to reach $6.7 billion by 2033, according to IMARC Group. That's a compound annual growth rate of over 16%. But the Australian government's Department of Industry, Science and Resources has flagged that Australia still lags behind comparable economies in robot density. So what's actually holding us back, and what would close that gap the fastest?
Look, I think the department is spot on in its analysis there. We do lag behind. Countries such as Singapore, South Korea certainly are leaders in the space of, the manufacturing and deployment of robotics. I think it's a couple of problems. I think it's funding our Australian companies. I mentioned VCs, earlier, that typically they'd be looking at software companies. So it's an education process to let people know that robotic companies are actually serious players. We've got 27 million people, 28 million people in Australia. Our markets are reasonably small. So all our robotic companies are actually focusing on a global footprint, and they need to do that because we just don't have enough people here to support them. I also think in terms of a couple of inhibitors for our robotics ecosystem is, where does the government spend their money? Like defense is typically one of the big procurement departments of robotics. And I get up at all conferences and panels that I've had the opportunity to speak on. My message to the purse holders is, where are you spending your money? A dollar spent here as opposed to a dollar spent globally is not the same dollar. We are supporting a whole ecosystem of Australians here if you support the companies. And, even if maybe it's a little bit more expensive to support an Australian, I think the kickback and the return of investment far outweighs a quick little bit of profit, or saving a little bit of money because you've used a cheap alternative. And generally speaking, using companies overseas, inevitably companies in Australia that use these companies contact local suppliers when they hit a problem and go, oh, can you help us? And my attitude is, actually, where did you buy this robot from? That was in the time that I still had my own company. I would get a bit knocky and go, why didn't you buy the robot from me so that I could support you? So that is my message to people out there. If you've got the opportunity to support an Australian company, this could be a company that one of your kids could go and work at one day, for all you know.
Well, Nicci, you host the podcast Let's Talk Robotics, and you're up to episode 189. You've spoken with CEOs from companies like Industrial Robotics, Southern Ocean Subsea, Roving Intelligence, and KUKA Australia. Across all of those conversations, what's the one theme or frustration that keeps coming up from Australian robotics companies? What's the thing they wish policymakers or the public understood better?
I think, unfortunately, one of the common themes is funding, and it's a very interesting perception that, look, my attitude with funding is, if you start a company, I don't know that you can rightly expect the government to fund you. Like that is a bit of a question that you should be asking yourself. But when you're looking at emerging technology and the benefit that it's going to give Australia, for instance, and that there is money available, and it's a question of how it's been allocated, then I can sense the frustration because there is money available. It's just a question of how they awarding the money and where is robotics in the mix of this. So I do think there's a bit of work to be done in that space. I think a lot of robotic companies do find it very frustrating, especially companies working in defense, and just the time it takes to make decisions. It just amazes me. You can make quicker decisions here. And I think the one thing to focus on is that they're not always going to get everything 100% right. You could back a company that you go, okay, listen, this didn't work out quite as we thought it would, but maybe the philosophy is not the fear of failure. It's more have an attitude of, we've learned something here of where we should be spending money.
Yeah, failure and experience are the greatest teachers, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. We should embrace it.
Yep, I definitely agree with you.
Now, the Robotics Australia Group operates as a not-for-profit peak body funded by sponsors like Lang O'Rourke, Advanced Navigation, an event of theirs I went to a couple of years ago. Just quite stunning what they've been able to do. Amazon, Nvidia via Multimedia Technology, and Intel. And as you noted in your LinkedIn post announcing the CEO transition, those sponsors, for a sector that's supposed to be worth billions, that's a fantastic list, but as you'd presumably agree, it should be bigger. Is funding the peak body's biggest constraint, and what would change if government stepped in more directly?
Funding it's a huge challenge for us, and you've mentioned a fraction of our sponsors there. Fulton Hogan is also a construction company that's a sponsor of ours. Vex Robotics, RSM Australia. So we extremely grateful to our sponsors, because of course they give us lump sums of money to be able to just do the work that we do. And then our network members, and especially our returning network members that have been on the journey with me for the last 3 years, I can't thank them enough for the support that they've given us and continue to give us. Look, I think for any association in Australia, it's a challenge. And All associations are on the same boat as we are. They're all fighting for funding. The government doesn't just fund associations. You have to find your own way of getting money. And I think it's in the value that we add to the community. So for us, it's about value. If you're a network member of ours, why is it important? And you're not just giving us your network membership for the year. What are we giving you in return? And I'm happy to put the challenge out there to any other association. If you can match what we're doing, bring it on, says the outgoing CEO.
Very good, very good. Now, Exponential Europe is on the exhibitor list, which is an international presence at what's otherwise a very Australian-focused event. Robotics Australia Group also has global partnerships with Silicon Valley Robotics, the International Alliance of Robotics Associations, Women in Robotics, and the Urban Robotics Foundation, as listed on your website. So how important are those international links for an industry that's still relatively small domestically, and are Australian robotics companies punching above their weight on the export front?
Oh, it's crucial to have these international relationships. And as you've mentioned, Exponential Robert Lang is going to be there um, with the sole purpose of meeting our robotic companies and opening up opportunities for them to go overseas and go to Dusseldorf and all these places where Exponential works. So really important. And I'm absolutely delighted that we've managed to get so many international companies as I call them affiliate network members of ours. We don't exchange money, but if people need help in Australia or any of our network members need help globally, I can put them in touch with them and go, listen, we've got a company coming out. Can you chat to them? I think of quite a few of our network members export globally. I'm just thinking of Hullbot's a great example, Swarm Farm Robotics, another great example. Surfbee, another great example of humble beginnings in Australia, and they absolutely just killing it overseas. So, again, our expertise, we don't stand back for anyone globally. Australians, they certainly have what it takes.
Thursday's gala dinner and awards night is the second time the Excellence in Robotics Awards have been held. As you mentioned, it was Melbourne last year, and that was the inaugural event. So what did you learn from the first awards night that shaped how this year's event was put together? And what should attendees expect from the evening, apart from a three-course dinner and presumably a few robot demonstrations to go along with the awards?
Lessons learned from last year. Dare I say, don't build your whole program around a ministerial representative, and then things happen and they couldn't attend. So last year was at the Monash College, that's part of Monash University. We had a fantastic evening there. It wasn't a sit down dinner; it was the first one that we hosted ourselves, and I thought this year it would be great to have a sit down dinner and really just relax through the evening. All our finalists will have videos shown of their capabilities and why they are finalists. And certainly, if you can get onto a wait list, please let me know if you still. We've got a couple of tickets left, but it's going to be a fantastic event. We don't actually have any robots running around there because it will be on the same day as the CIT event. So I think, there's enough time for people to go to that event and then come to ours as well.
Well, before I ask you a couple of my standard closing questions, is there anything else that we need to know about the Robotics Australia Group in Australia that we haven't already discussed? And now I just actually remembered also, if people want the tickets for the gala night, that's at the Robotics Australia Group LinkedIn page, and also Eventbrite. You can go to Eventbrite and get tickets there.
Yes, of course. And the expo is free for anyone to attend. So if you're on holiday and you're close enough to Canberra, hop in your car. I know petrol's expensive, but take your kids there. I've had a few parents reach out to me asking, is this appropriate for kids? Of course, it's appropriate for kids. You want to build their dreams and see what they are capable of doing. So it's definitely a good place to do that. Look, Alex, I think we've covered everything. We're always open to discussions for getting new network members on. Paul Mason will be, as of the 1st of May, your contact person there. But until then, you can reach out to me. And you can even reach out to me afterwards. My email address will be operational for a couple of months as I field off and hand over to Paul.
Now that your tenure as CEO is coming to a close, where will your next chapter take you?
Oh, that's anyone's guess, honestly. The question is always when is the right time to step out of something that you love doing? And um, yeah, I was thinking about it, do I have another couple of years in me? But I honestly do believe we're at a good junction now for Paul, especially Paul, to step in and take the reins and take it to its next level. He's got a lot of experience, as I've mentioned before, and I think the most immediate thing for me is I'm going on a little bit of a holiday that, as you can imagine, being in my role, I have had holidays, but it's with one eye on the email box. So I'm taking a complete break, and I'm going to be away for quite a few weeks, and then I'll be back in Melbourne, and who knows? Someone will need my opinionated self to go and work somewhere.
Very good. Now, as we get towards the end of the interview, I always like to ask a couple of personal closing questions. And I'm going to modify this with a third one. But the first of which is to ask if you could please share a memory of your first personal computer. And as I've just started adding, if you can share a memory of the first computer you bought for your children. But of course, I also have to ask you, what's the first robot you ever owned?
Okay, so the first computer, I have to be honest here, I had absolutely nothing to do with this. It was my husband who was an IT boffin and guru, and he took care of all of that. And he took many hours to actually train me on computers and what to do. And the first robot that I ever owned was um, doing for the company Exaptech that, as I mentioned earlier, or referred to as I had my own company for 10 years. And it came out of a business that my husband and I had, an agile consultancy business, and we decided to import telepresence robots. So Exaptech specialized in telepresence robot. And if your audience doesn't know what that is, it's basically a robot that can drive around in your home. You can dial in from anywhere in the world, and you, as the dialer in, have got control of the robot, or you could get someone on the receiving end to manage the robot for you. But the robot is essentially autonomous. It's Skype on wheels, and you can drive around and attend anywhere. And we tried this at a conference, uh, um, a work from, or not a working from home, workplace happiness, which could be a contradiction in terms for some people, but that was the theme of the conference. And we had a double robot zooming around, and we had people from America and from New Zealand dialing in, and it was such a huge success. We decided, well, that's it. Like, that's going to be my company. My husband said, there, it's your company, not really knowing too much about technology. I'm talking about 10, 12 years ago. And yeah, we started Exaptic, and my idea of running a company was I'd answer emails. I think that's good enough. That's a good start. And anyway, I've got into a program at a Collider program at QUT University, which taught me a few things about, how you actually run a company. And I had the company for 10 years before I exited. So in short answer, it was a telepresence robot. And, I had to learn everything. And I always say to people, look, if I can figure out robots, then anyone can do it. Because honestly, what I knew about what robotics and telepresence robots, it was frightening, but you can learn. And I actually ended up thinking, these robots are actually damn useful. During COVID, the telepresence robots came into their own. Like, you could reach people who are really ill, and you could go in there unassisted with your robot, and you could talk to a loved one. And that's essentially, again, what problem is your robot solving for you? Why are you using this? Not because it's some fad or something. It's there's a real solution. And most of our network members, if not everyone, they're solving a problem with their solutions and what they're doing.
Well, these days, you can have the headset on. You can actually see through the robot's eyes directly, beamed in front of you. And of course, with the ability to have tactile robots, you could actually, in theory, also feel when you shake somebody's hand. I mean, the robot revolution really hasn't truly started yet. As I was saying before at the beginning of this interview, the way that Isaac Asimov and others have dreamt it up. So, I mean, the most exciting parts of this are all still yet to come.
Oh, I think so, definitely. And I think the adoption in Australia, as people become more comfortable with the technology, if you go into restaurants in Melbourne now, you've got robots delivering your food and no
Yeah,
one
I've
even
seen it.
blinks. I mean, people don't even, they're reading their books, they take their food. I want to say to him, say thanks to the robot, tap it on his head so it can go away. Like this. One of the people that I interviewed was on ethics and robots and, how do you address a robot? I went, this is taking a bit far, but anyway, like they're people that really specialize in this space and what color should the robot be? We're opening a can of worms now, but it's a lot around it.
Yeah, well, I mean, kids today, if they're born today, they're growing up in a world where AI is just a normal part of life, and robots are now a normal part of life. By the time they're 10, I mean, as I was saying before, these things will be on sale in the big box electronics stores for you to take home, just like you can buy a printer or a smartphone. So
Yeah, I
it's
think it's there already, Alex. Like there's a lot available on the market. Whether it's a trusted, look, obviously you have to be careful whether it's any technology you bring into your house, you're opening yourself up. Make sure your passwords are secure. Like that would be my advice. I don't know if you read that article on LinkedIn of was it the Roomba robot
yes,
that
I saw
the
that.
guy
Yes,
inadvertently hacked like 10,000 Roomba. He wasn't trying to, and he did that, but of course it was fixed. But again, be aware. Be aware what you let into your home environment.
yeah, there's no question about that. And just quickly back to the personal computer question: was that a Windows PC or a DOS or a Commodore
Yeah, it
64? Do you
was. It was
remember?
a win. No, was it? Yeah, I think it was. Oh gosh, that's going back so far long now that I can barely remember that. But I mean, those computers were these huge desktop. I mean, I'm sitting on a Mac here now that, I take wherever I go. I remember you couldn't move this anywhere and we stuck it in the corner and I'm going back like when you dialed up the internet. Oh, I'm showing
Ah,
my
yes.
age here. The whole thing there. I don't know
Yeah.
what the youngsters don't know anything, but yeah. In South Africa, where I grew up, obviously, yeah, I remember. And at least, computers weren't. It's not like now. If you're not on your phone, you're on your computer. We so glued to these devices. I do wonder what I'm going to do with my time after Robotics Australia Group because this is predominantly what I do. If I'm not working, I'm on my phone checking LinkedIn because I need to know what other companies are doing, my network members are doing. We need to promote them, and it's sort of one hand on technology. The switching off capability, I'd be interested if your audience, how do they genuinely switch off? Because we've always sort of we on and that fight or flight response that we've got, you need to give it a rest. And the only way you can do that is if you're actually bored and you're not glued to phones and computers.
So my second and last question is to ask if you could please share some of the best advice that you've received in life to help you get where you are today.
That would be from my mom, my dear departed mom, who passed away when she was 84 years old, a spunky woman, if ever. And she said to me, now, Nick, because she'd like to call me Nick, she's the only one who's allowed to do that. She'd go, when things get tough, tie a rope at the end of tie a knot at the end of the rope and hang on for dear life. And that advice has served me well. Like myself, like everyone in the world, you've had things happen to you that you've gone, oh, that's just nearly crippled me. And everyone's got something that happens to them. You never know what people are dealing with on a daily basis, and that served me very well. And I, in turn, have told my children that, hang on, this too will pass because when we get stuck in trauma, we think, it's forever. It's not. There's a period, it will pass. Um, and also, try and be kinder than you think necessary because you just got no idea what people are coping with on a daily basis. Like, I think that's good advice just generally. It's just, take it easy. You just don't know what's happening in another person's life.
That's right. Everyone's fighting their battles. And you mentioned children. Do you remember the first computer you bought for them?
Oh, that would be my husband, Alex. So I could care less what they got. They probably got little Macs running around. Yeah, we're a Mac family. So everything's Apple. Yeah,
Yeah.
Apple pay me for the shout out, but yeah, we're all Apple. So
Yeah. Well, I mean,
um,
Apple's rumored to be working on robots too, so that'll be fascinating to see when they finally bring that to life. Some sort of
look,
home pad with a robot arm going around. I'd love to see how they're going to do it.
It would be interesting. Look, if you look at all the money that's invested in this and going back quite a few years with things that have just not worked, you have to ask yourself, could this money have been used to something else? But again, if people have got the money, you can't tell people how to spend their money and how to invest. And all the failures out there have been used to a success story somewhere else because there's a lesson learned. And um, yeah, I think people who enjoy robotics, they can go, yes, this is what we should be doing. I've had conversations with people who go, oh, please, this is the biggest load of rubbish. So it just depends if you think this is something useful that you think you should be doing. And again, I come back to what I've said right through this chat with you is, are these robots useful? Are they doing something that's protecting us from harm? If you look at Puralink, it's one of our companies. They've got this little robot that goes into water tunnels, waterways and tunnels, small tunnels that you don't actually want people doing any remotely doing this, and they've got a little robot doing it. And we're going to see these sort of, you mentioned Contactile, that also is a spin out from university. Puralink was also a spin out. So universities are really important for our companies because a lot of them, that's how they've done it. They've spun out from a uni. And anyway, look, so cut me at the anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Nicci, what is your final message to the viewers, readers, and listeners, besides making sure they make the trip to Canberra to attend the Free to Attend Expo this Thursday?
Well, my message to the viewers is follow us on LinkedIn, sign up for our newsletter. It's got a 58% open rate. It's really interesting. There's lots to learn there. And look, you can sign up as a network member of Robotics Australia Group. You can sign up as a friend. I think supporting the industry, if you're interested in it, is really important. And, we've got lots of parents, their kids are interested in what career should they be going. Check out our contacts on our webpage. All our network members are listed there. They all love to hear from people. So they've all got email addresses. You can email anyone on our database there that's on our website, printed as a network member, and they will get back to you. So I encourage conversations. Don't be afraid, ask questions, contact people. Paul coming in. As you mentioned, Dr. Sue Kay, she's also a founding director and the current chair. Do join with her on LinkedIn, and I know you've interviewed her, but she's super busy, so maybe direct your queries to Paul. More of you can do that. Yeah, but reach out. We're happy to help. We're happy to make introductions. Between Sue and the board, they know everyone in robotics in Australia, the who's who, and if we don't, we'll find out for you. And I think generally I could say our group is exceptionally helpful.
Well, Nicci Rossouw, the outgoing CEO of Robotics Australia Group, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I'll be definitely keen to meet you and Paul on Thursday and the event as well. I'll be filming it all so people can watch online, but nothing is as good as being there, seeing the robots in action, asking questions whilst the people are in that fantastic exhibitor space. So thank you again, and I do hope we can speak again in the future.
Oh, thanks, Alice, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.